And on this very special edition of the newsroom from VLGA Connect, joining Kathryn and I is the Minister for Local Government in Victoria, the Honourable Shaun Leane. Hello, Minister. Great to have you back.
Thanks so much, Chris, and hello to you and Kathryn as well. There's been a bit happening in local government, so I think it was timely for us to get together and have another chat.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great to catch up. As you say, it's been a big year. You've just recently issued a ministerial statement on local government, and we thought we'd take the opportunity to explore some of the themes that are coming through in that statement. And of course, with elections now completed and new councillors taking office, what's top of mind for you about the sector right at the moment, Minister?
Thanks, Chris. I suppose up front, can I just congratulate all the re-elected and newly elected councillors? And as I said, in the letters I sent to the different councils, it's an exciting thing. It's a great thing to actually have the honour to represent your community, and not many people get that opportunity. So it is a great thing, and it is a great privilege. The theme of the letter that I sent to the sector is, I think that, in my view of the sector is that, of course, it's the elected officials and the mayors and of course it's the CEOs and the directors, but it's the, tens of thousands of council workers. It's also the peak bodies like yourselves. It's also, the unions. It's the groups that work within the sector too, that might not be outside, like Ratepayers Vic and others, but I think as a sector, I'm really keen for us to really embrace that we are a sector, and I'm keen for us to really embrace that we really embrace the good things that councils do, and we go on a mission to talk up the good things that councils do as regularly and as often as we can. And we should be proud of the local government sector and what it delivers and what it's delivered in a really hard time in recent months. And we also on the flip side of that, we as a sector, we should all own the ordinary things that has happened over the number of years, and work together. If we can get a position where we're supporting each other and supporting the odd council that is finding themselves in a difficult period for whatever reason, if we can support each other and own some of the struggles and some of the ordinary occurrences that councils experience, I think we're just going to be much better off for it. So I'm pretty keen for us to work in that particular fashion, and I know we can. And I'm a bit of a Johnny come lately, and I know it's been pretty much like that for a while, but I'm hoping that we can all put a bit on steroids and really support each other and really show everyone that the local government sector is something to be really proud of.
And Minister, if I might just comment on that, certainly during this COVID pandemic, we have seen local government really come out to the forefront and shine. And it's unfortunate, I think, as you say, that often it's only in times of emergency or disaster that the work of local government really can be seen and appreciated, when of course it's happening all of the time. So from the VLGA's perspective, certainly, we're very keen to see the local government sector recognised for the important work that it does, but also on the flip side of that, try and increase the level of awareness of those elected representatives coming into the sector about what their responsibilities are, particularly in terms of compliance and standards of conduct. But equally important, I think there's a role for the community, for the voters themselves, to increase their awareness of the local government sector and, in fact, take an informed decision when they're voting in elections. And I think that there's an opportunity there for the local government sector to work with the state government also on increasing that awareness across the board.
Yeah, absolutely, Kathryn. And I think, it's an interesting election. It was a unique election this year, for obvious reasons. But my view was coming into it that I just think people were so locally engaged. Like everything had to be local because, a lot of us, when we went for a period of time, a lot of us in the metro area, that we could only move 5 kilometres from our homes, then I think people were really zeroing in what sort of services, what sort of parks and different things were actually available.
Yeah.
A short walk from home, and the returns in the ballots, like, really, I think, proved that. It was just an amazing return for a local government election, and I think the outcome was, as far as I think there was concerns about there may be. Given the election, there may be some concerns about the level of diversity in the candidates elected, and I personally was delighted with the gender balance. And when you look at the gender balance of the mayors in recent elections, of the selection of mayors, we're really not that far off the aspiration that we have for the next election to have 50% female mayors. We're really not that far off. Like, there's some, there was some great outcomes. The LGBTIQ plus candidates, successful candidates. I mean, the Victorian Pride lobby were just delighted with 28, absolutely delighted. And I'm lucky enough to be asked along to one of their events just, last week, and they did a lot of work without a lot of great help, like with volunteers, and they did some great work. And when you think we've got 6 people that identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders that have been successful, it's really a great outcome. And I think, Kathryn, I think people were locally engaged because they probably had to be. So maybe we need to work together to find out how we sort of bottle that, and we continue that sort of interest in their local government and in their council councillors.
Absolutely. Look, I must say it's been bittersweet. I've lamented at the number of people who are now picnicking in our local park, but that's also an off-lead dog park, which of course causes all sorts of problems, particularly if you have a 15-week-old Labrador pup, which I do. But anyway, that's just, I think, a good example. I've not seen it like that before, and I think it is directly related to people living and experiencing their community more than they ever have.
Yeah, and I think, when you think about going for a walk, wasn't really such a thing before this year. I mean, it wasn't, you weren't planning a day around going for a walk, unfortunately.
It was taken for granted, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a fantastic thing, actually. I think if there are any good byproducts of a global pandemic, probably the answer is no. But there's probably been some learnings out of it as well, though.
So Minister, you talk about that increased localism, that connectedness that's come by necessity. Did you ever have doubts? There were a lot of people arguing that we wouldn't get those sorts of outcomes. In fact, it would go the other direction if we had an election under COVID conditions. You stuck to your guns, but did you ever doubt that might be the outcome?
Oh, look, I think, Chris, I wanted to listen to all the views and not sort of disrespect all the views. As I said, I'm delighted in the outcome. I kind of feel like there was some commentary that kind of didn't have any great basis to it. So I think it was more, anecdotally, or this might happen or that might happen, where I just did stick to my guns, and I felt like people were so locally engaged. And it's great. We had a great outcome with people from the CALD community as well. And I just think that we shouldn't underestimate anyone, and we shouldn't underestimate any group of people as well. I think that there is everyone. There's everyone in every group of people. Have their concerns about that. As Kathryn said, the local park, or have concerns about different facilities at a local level. And I think getting back to bottling that interest and getting more and more people putting their hands up for local government in the future is something we need to strive towards.
And I think just on that, Minister, I think there's some lessons there for perhaps the cohort of local, very passionate local government people who were perhaps advocating for a deferral of the election, and not really perhaps appreciating that level of interest from the community who wanted to be engaged. And I know that was one of the considerations for the government. In fact, it was a very real legal consideration about the fact that the council term was a 4-year term. There were people who were desperately keen to retire at the end of their term, but also a cohort of people who are really keen to put their hand up and participate in that democratic process at the local level. And clearly the results demonstrate that. And I think from a local government perspective that we should be listening to not only ourselves in terms of having an inward focus, but really engaging externally as well. And that's certainly one of the things we have been trying to do here at the VLGA through programs like this, where we can bring in speakers who might not necessarily be in the local government sector, but certainly talk about the issues that councillors and officers should be considering.
There was all sorts of considerations I need to take into place, and I think that I think in one of the recent previous interviews with yourselves, I was very clear that my understanding of the Act, and I've got some really smart people around me to advise me that probably the next Saturday would have been the option for me as far as the Act. We probably could have pushed that envelope, but I don't know if I was too prepared to do that. So, and I think people want their elections to stay at the date or close to the date they've been prescribed. And I could never imagine, and it was a global pandemic and it was something we never experienced before, but I couldn't imagine Daniel Andrews in November 2022 sort of pushing a point to anyone that maybe, there's a difficult times around, so can maybe give this government another 6 months. And
Good point.
well,
I couldn't have seen the opposition agreeing to that.
well, I wouldn't listen to talkback radio. I think I'd stick to gold smooth music or something like that.
Yeah.
Minister, can I change the subject slightly? You talk in your statement about the rating system, the hardship policies that councils have implemented, recognising that people are doing it tough, and that there's a review of the rating system still to be completed. Because the flip side of all of that is the longer term sustainability question for councils financially. What are your thoughts around where that might be going?
Yeah, Chris, there's a few things in there. I can indicate that, and as I have stated a number of times with different groups, that the report on the review and the government's response will be delivered before the end of this year. I know the end of this year is 5 minutes to midnight, but it will be very, very soon as we've committed. I think there's a few things around the sustainability issue. And I suppose getting back to working at it as a sector, I think there's some really good opportunities. And I know your organisations and LG professionals and others have had a really good look into this and actually supported it. But, there's some great personal development opportunities for, young professionals that are working for the large metro councils to do some time in rural councils and supporting them, and the learning would be enormous, because I'd imagine at a rural council you're not one of 12 or 20 different people in that particular profession. You might be the only one.
Multi-skilling is the name of the day. Exactly.
So the personal development opportunity would be absolutely enormous. I think on the hardship policies, and look, and I'll give council a lot of credit, because I think every council reviewed their hardship policy with the advent of the COVID-19 virus and what that meant to the people that they were inside their catchment areas. The hardship policy, I kind of, and I might hope this isn't too controversial thing to say, but I think some of the best hardship policies I've found outside of local government And I spoke to a CEO of a water company that when he became CEO, chased out all the debt collectors and stopped using debt collectors and brought some people in-house. And when people weren't paying their water rates, they'd get a phone call from someone from that particular water company and ask them how things are going, if there's problems. And if there was problems, they'd say, well, how about we ring you back up in 6 months' time and see if we can't sort something out if you're in a better position. So they actually believe people, and apparently that way of going about things has saved that water company a lot of money. So I think there's ways about going about things that, and I'm sure a lot of councils are already doing this, but I think criticisms around hardship policies that I've had from external groups is sometimes they're hard to find on a website. So we could do some work on that. And I'm not saying that would be unintentional, but that's the feedback that I've had from some external people with that sort of concern. But yeah, I think, and I understand, there's a lot of things in the Act that's going to improve the transparency of a number of these sort of issues, but there's still work to be done. And once again, I'm pretty keen to work as a sector, not just me. As I just outlined then, I a great idea from a water company, but might not suit every council. So not for me to just sort of dictate. We work together as a sector and work out the best way forward.
Minister, I just thought when we caught up recently, you mentioned your ministerial mayoral advisory committee, and there were some changes you were thinking of making with that. Did you want to just tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. So I just think that getting back to probably me or the state government talking to the sector, or in this case to the mayors on that group, I'm really keen, and expressions of interest to be on that group will be publicised soon for mayors, but I'm actually keen to task the mayors on that group to bring policies and concepts that they're really proud of, that think that are working really well to that group, to me, because that it's an advisory group to myself and the government. And so I kind of want to flip it around a bit to not us just giving reports to the mayors and then the mayors making commentary, which has been helpful, but I really want the mayors on that group to come to me and to the government with their best ideas that we might be able to promote to the whole sector. And I think work needs to be done on how do we externalise to every mayor and every councillor and every council the work that group is doing, so everyone knows what's being discussed. Everyone knows that a mayor from a regional city has come in and said that regional city, that council does this great work in a certain area, and and it's something that can be embraced in part and full in other regional cities. So
perhaps there's an opportunity, and this is it's not really a question, it's just a statement, an opportunity in the review of the Victorian State Local Government Agreement, which I think is due to be looked at some stage, to incorporate some of those principles within that review, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. And I look, and I'm open to, I think, and I've said this to most groups that I've met, and if I haven't said it to any groups, it's probably because I didn't think about it at the time. But it's been an absolute privilege to be in this position. And when I meet, even groups like yourself, but when I've met councils and I've met groups of representative councils and different people from the sector, I'm learning all the time. It's a two-way street. And for me to be the best minister I can be, I need to have these conversations. And for me to take the best policy I can to the executive, I really appreciate that people have prepared the time to give to me to actually, inform me and educate me on, as I said, what is the best policy I can take to government? What is the best way the state government and local councils can work together? So yeah, as I said, it's been a great privilege, and I think Chris touched on it before. And part of that privilege is some of the great work that local government have done in recent months during a really challenging time. And I think of a conversation I had with the mayor and the CEO that told me they stepped into assisting a group that were preparing care packages for most needy people inside the area that their catchment took in. And I said, oh, no, that's a great thing you've done. That's really admirable. And the mayor's response was, we had no choice. So we're the people that will do this. And I thought that's really good response, that local government aren't like just step in. It's no mucking around. It's no like looking for any great applause. But I think that's part of it too. I think we need to get those stories out more to make sure we change that narrative of the great work that local governments do.
And look, I think the sector would really welcome hearing that from the Minister for Local Government, and also to see the state take an active role in that. As I mean, essentially the sector is an extension of the state through a state act, but that partnership that you spoke about at the beginning of our conversation today, I think can't be overestimated at all.
I think, Kathryn, you touched on the culture of the sector, and one of the things I'm pretty keen to do is, and I think I mentioned this before, that we'll get a university to do, I've asked the Department of Finding University to do a paper on, the history of the culture. I think we've got to understand, how we got to some points where you read some of the Monitors reports that led to councils being terminated. How do we get to the point where, we've got councillors, directing racist, sexist comments towards staff? In 2020, I don't know how we got there, but there's probably a bit of a history to it. And one thing I'm really keen, when I do speak to different groups, is to, understand the history. And my understanding, and it's not great, it's getting better, but my understanding is that local councils were set up in a more of a board fashion. They were boards, and then it was changed to local councils to govern over, different areas of the state. And I think that's the best way for councils to actually do their business is act like a board. And there's two other levels of government that's based on a parliament system, a two-party adversary system. I know there's more than two parties now, but that's based on that system, which means that, and you'll see clips from the evening news where we might be, not acting very well towards each other in question time, but that's the system. I know we can all behave better, but that's the system. So I'm kind of keen to just get that narrative that local councils shouldn't feel like they need to be adversary when they've got a difference. Local councils can, really get back to that, mindset. They're a board. Let's work through it. Let's do the best, let's work through it and show some sort of solidarity that we will get the best outcome for the people we represent.
And Minister, the VLGA would be very happy to have some further conversations with you on that. In fact, I've had some conversations with the School of Government at the University of Melbourne and other institutions examining this very concept of governance in a elected representative model, and what are some of the systemic barriers to that. But perhaps not for today to go into. As Chris would know, we could talk for hours about it.
Yeah, but thanks, Kathryn. And it's all helpful. It's all, we're, as I said, we're all sort of, and I consider myself in this role as part of the sector. Some people might not think that, but I do. And like, we're all getting back to, we're all in it, it is a great sector now, and that's what we need to narrative that we need to get out more and more. But it can be better, and whatever we can do to support other councils to get in a better position as far as, if they have got an adversary sort of council, well, that sort of doesn't help anyone. So how do we help them?
So it's already a bumper edition of the newsroom, Kathryn, but I did have perhaps one last question to ask the Minister. I was going to delve into the standards of conduct, but I think you've touched on that, Minister, and remains to be seen, obviously, how that, I think, leadership approach that you've taken about calling that out, how that plays out in the sector in this coming term. I think you've shown really strong leadership, and we're doing whatever we can to reinforce that message at every opportunity. I wanted to ask you, just as we get to the end of the year, it's been a big year of implementing the new legislation. To be frank, there's a bit of fatigue around the sector because we've had COVID, elections, and all of this. How do you feel it's gone, and how would you like to see the next year? Because there's a lot more reforms to come. How would you like to see that play out, do you think?
I agree with you, Chris. It's been, I've only been in this position, I think, 5 months, and it's just flown. It's just flown. I think when you get to half a year, you kind of can't say you're new anymore. So I'm not far off that, but the time's just flown, and as I said, I really enjoyed it. But I have appreciated the challenges that local councils and councillors and CEOs and directors have really faced. It's been, I think, it's been amazing, really, and when you throw in an election as well, and I want to take the opportunity before I forget, I just really want to praise the VC, the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, and all the workers. Really tough for them as well. And I spent hours with them on meetings like this, and I think they got sick of the sight of me, so they told me they'll see me in about 6 months. But that's a great job that they did. So I think it's, I've only been impressed. I know that I'm saying that, we want to work on some culture issues, and that's only, that happens in a small percentage of the sector. But I think that if we can all work together and sort of get to a point where that's nearly stamped out, it'll be better for the rest of us. Look, I see next year as a year, hopefully, that with the, hopefully that if we can get on top of the virus, as we have at this point, is that local councils can do more of what they want to do, and we'll get out there and some of the support, I haven't mentioned this before, the support of local councils to small enterprises has been just absolutely fantastic. The outdoor dining initiative, which local councils take responsibility for, has been absolutely wonderful. It's a bit checkered, but it's really difficult. It's not easy. It's not easy for local councils to implement this concept. So I think I really see next year as just a great year. I just see it as a great year I think it's a great year for local council. I'm an optimist, and I think that, we can sort of change the narrative that when people can, like, their first instincts can be negative about local council, we can change the narrative if we all work together. Because we know the great work local councils do. We know, they're huge employers. They're so important. As I said before, they're huge employers of women, which is so important, getting it out of this COVID time. So I think, Chris, I know there'll be times when the state government and myself and local councils may be apart on certain policy issues. I know that. But that's all part of it. But I'm really looking forward to, working with the local government sector, and, anything I can do to support the good work they do, I will be assisting in that.
I know that we're going to have to wrap up, but there's two important appointments, of course, that the sector is waiting to be concluded. That's the Executive Director of LGV and also the Chief Municipal Inspector. For your information, also, we'll be hosting on VLGA Connect, but it's a collaborative endeavour between LG Pro, VLGA and LGIU, which is a international think tank that's set up now in Australia, a global CEO panel to talk about some of the implications of COVID on the operations of council. So that's going to be our end of year finale on the 17th of December. I just thought I'd mention that before we finished up today.
Thank you for your time today. You've been so generous. It is a pleasure, as always, to have some time to delve a bit deeper into those issues, and we look forward to maintaining the relationship through your term as Minister.
Oh, thanks so much. And anytime in the future, let's make this a regular thing. I think you do a great job in actually, a lot of people do tune in on your regular episodes that are really interested in the sector. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister.
It's been our pleasure.
Thanks very much. Kathryn, I think it's great we get so much time with the Minister from time to time. And he's very willing to share his thoughts, isn't he?
Look, he is. He's very generous with his time, and he was clearly happy to chat for a very long time today, which, of course, we welcome, but also as an opportunity to have essentially what's an end-of-year wrap-up, an in-depth conversation with the Minister for Local Government on what has been an incredibly busy and disruptive year, and for a minister who's only been in that portfolio for 5 months, has come in off, I guess, the back of controversy, on the tail of COVID, and also a local government election.
So I had a long list of things that we could have spoken to him about. I've only got about halfway down, so
Yes,
I'll save them for next time. Thanks, Kathryn. You have a great week, and we'll see you again for another newsroom next week.
Yep. See you then, Chris.
Kathryn Arndt, the CEO of the VLGA, with us, and we've had the Minister for Local Government, Shaun Leane, with us on this special edition of the newsroom from VLGA Connect. Thanks for joining us.